My dear sisters and brothers in the risen Jesus, and may the joy and the love of Jesus grip our hearts as we celebrate the triumph of Easter. Tombs. Every country usually will have the tombs of their great leaders, or the Samadhi. It's a way of recalling somebody who was great and special. Some have been not just buried, some have been mummified and even embalmed, like Chairman Mao or Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, or even Lenin in the former Soviet Union. But the tomb of Jesus in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, I was privileged to celebrate the Eucharist a few times when I was studying there. What is so unique about that tomb is that it remembers not a body that is still there, but the empty tomb. And so what we celebrate today, particularly, is to see that Jesus, from that tomb, broke out of it, was raised from the dead, and that is why we have the reason of Easter. Today, to help us in this liturgy, we've got a number of symbols. But what we had just now is the liturgy of the Word. And the church serves, as it were, a platter of wonderful readings. Because this Easter was not just a random act of God. He prepared the people over a period of time. And if you wondered why did we need to have so many readings, it was precisely so that you will know that God always had Easter in his heart. The first reading from the book of Genesis speaks about God creating, and in a very poetic way, different aspects of creation. God saw it was good. God saw it was good. It was a refrain. Until on the sixth day he creates man and woman, to use inclusive language, in his image and in her likeness. Because God created them male and female. But then we messed it up. But again, for God, he never abandons us. In fact, the more we mess it up, the more he goes after us. Because as one of my favorite mantras is, we've got a God who's scandalously merciful, shamelessly forgiving, generously loving, and prophetically challenging. And that is why he raises Moses, as we heard in the second reading, to bring his people out of the land of bondage, of slavery, into the promised land. To experience what it means to have a God who redeems. The third reading was taken from the book of Ezekiel. After the great Exodus event from Egypt into the promised land, there was also the time of the exile, where the Babylonians took the people from Judah and Jerusalem and took them to exile in Babylon, modern-day Iraq. And even there the people messed it up, and speaking in the name of God calls them back in those beautiful words of the covenant. You will be my people and I will be your God. Isn't that wonderful? Easter was always in the heart of God. And that's why when we heard from the letter to the Romans, what was it saying there? We who have been baptized, and the Greek word is baptizein, which means to be immersed. At our baptism, we are immersed into the life of Jesus, his death, and therefore his resurrection. And then, of course, we come to the gospel. Because there in the gospel, what we see are some unique features that appear. First of all, it's the women who go to the tomb. They are the first witnesses. They are the first missionaries, because they tell them, this is what we have seen, this is what we have experienced. And Jesus was daring to choose them, because at that time a woman's witness did not count for much, and yet he staked his credibility as the first witnesses being women. The stone had to be removed. It was already taken away. And then those beautiful words of those angels who say, why do you seek the living among the dead? Just listen to the power of the scriptures that have been proclaimed to us today. No matter how much the people distance themselves from God, He just doesn't give up on us. Death does not have the last word. Resurrection takes place. And that's why we say life has changed, not ended. If a friend or a neighbor of yours who's not a Christian were to ask you, what do you celebrate at Easter? I wonder what response you would give. Say, no, we go to church and we exchange Easter eggs, have a bada khana. Or you might say, I was in Bombay and he said, Father, actually, we know that Easter is a bigger feast than Christmas, but at least for Christmas we wear a suit, because it's too warm to wear it at Easter time. Easter is about wearing new clothes. One tragic thing I often recall is this woman who said to me, Father, I just love Lent, but I hate Easter. I said, did I hear you right? Yes, I love Lent, but I hate Easter. She says, for the 40 days in Lent, my husband doesn't touch a drop of alcohol. But come Easter, in 40 hours, he makes up what he missed for 40 days. Some of us will be crying through our tears as I say this. Now look here, I don't want to be a spoilsport. The reason for placing these questions was, what really does Easter mean to us? How do we live this marvelous, the greatest feast for us Christians? Because what good is it if Jesus appeared as the risen Lord in Jerusalem, but not here for us in Bangalore? What good is it if Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene and the rest, but not to us here? What good is it if Jesus appears 2,000 years ago, but not today? We are not celebrating a relic of the past. We are celebrating an event that is unending, because we have been baptized into the life and into the death of Jesus. One of the saddest situations I came across a few years ago. I was not based in the country at that time, but it's a scenario that is played out perhaps in too many families. In a family there was such a close bond, close relationship between the siblings, the brothers and sisters, but as they grew older and they got married, they had other circles of friends, other interests, and slowly they drifted apart. They disapproved of each other's choices, and then they who were so close were now strangers to each other. Now, it was not mere indifference. It was also a viciousness that came into the relationship. And situations like these happened in too many families, and they become particularly acute when the parents die and the property has to be divided, because then that divides the family as well. And then one of those, there were two brothers and a sister. One sister was diagnosed with cancer, and one would have thought that that was a wake-up call. Because what are you going to say to your sibling or whoever you're in conflict when they're lying there and say, die, damn you, go to hell? Things really got terrible. There was the anger against God on the part of this woman, because how come I've suffered? And there was scarcely much help coming from the siblings. They didn't even care. It is as if the other did not exist. Each one of them were nursing their wounded emotions, their self-justified stance, defending their pride, and each one believing that they were perched on the throne of righteousness. Each one truly believed that they were the wronged one. And if the other stepped forward to admit that they were in the wrong, then I might consider giving them my forgiveness. Can you imagine this? Heart-rending dialogues. Do you know how much I did for her? Do you know what he said to me? Ungrateful wretch. I may forgive, but I will not forget. And they made sure that every conversation, this was thrown at the face, and they expected reconciliation. It looked as though each one were living in their own tombs and dragging the other, or sealing the tombs for their siblings. Ironically, as the parish priest said, all of them were practicing Catholics. God alone knows what they were practicing. Not very Catholic at all. Unending bickering, accusation, distancing, name-calling. Providentially, there was an opening of grace. One decided to break the deadlock, the stalemate. He said, life's too short for us to live each one in our personal hell and each one in our individual tomb. Instead of overpowering this sick sister with sharp, unforgiving remarks, I will overpower her with love that we once knew when our parents were alive. He approached her and said, on my part, I am sorry for all that I have said and done to you. No ifs, no buts, no conditions. I also have experienced hurt from you. But today, with God's grace, I wish to forgive you, not only from my head, but also from my heart. The other brother who sat on the fence and he moved from side to side, he also got caught in the vortex of reconciliation. The parish priest who was present there said later to me, listen to his words, this was an avalanche of grace. What a beautiful phrase. Tears, hugs, and laughter followed. Each had come out of the tomb, and in doing so, drew the others as well from outside of the tomb. It was as though the words of the angel, why do you seek the living among the dead? Because now they were life-giving to each other. How we wish that this would play out in all our homes and families, in all our convents and religious communities, in all our presbyteries in the diocese. How we wish that this will be so much part of what it means to be Christian. To experience the power of the resurrection and our own personal Easter. Because what good is it if Jesus appeared, risen in Jerusalem but not here? What good is it if 2,000 years ago but not now? What good is it to Mary Magdalene and not to me and you? We spoke about taking away the stone, because the stone, and that's one of the things we need to do if we are going to experience the power of the resurrection, else we will stay in the tomb. The stone separates the dead from the living. It blocks people from loving one another, from communicating with each other. I wonder what could be for you or for me the stone that keeps us in a grave, in a rut, in a groove. I wonder what could be for us the stone, perhaps the comfort zone that we don't want to move out of. Take away the stone. Perhaps the stone of fear that cripples to the point of paranoia. The stone of revenge and hatred, which destroys me like a cancer from within, which robs me of peace and happiness. The stone of being self-righteous. I'm always right and looking down on the others, sometimes with a pious mask or a pious facade. The stone is best described as having a stony heart that is so rigid and rough that it blocks me and blocks others from going. Because unless the stone is taken away, we will be the living dead zombies. Come out of our tombs is the call of Easter. It could be the tomb of narcissism, where I am the center of everything and the rest of the people around me should bow down and follow my line. Narcissism is getting to be an epidemic in the world today. It could be being indifferent to God, because I'm so self-sufficient, I don't need God. I might come from time to time, but I can run my life on my own. It could be absolutely unconcerned about the others, the poor, the broken, the suffering, the sick, and the dying. What is the tomb that is keeping us in? On Easter, we are called to come out of the tomb, from death to life, from tomb to light, from worry to faith. That's what we're celebrating at Easter. We are not just come here to light candles and blow them out and light them again. We are come to be immersed in the life of Jesus and therefore live the life of Jesus. What I find so captivating are those words, why do you seek the living among the dead? We chase the wrong things, the wrong persons, the wrong desires, which please or satisfy for the moment, but leave us high and dry in the long run. As we fail in our commitments to the church, to our spouses, to our children, to the responsibilities given to us. And when we go down this way, because as evening shadows fall and there's darkness, it also enters into us. And then only in the morning we say, wow, how could I have done that? Because the morning light throws light in the darkness of our lives. My dear sisters and brothers, Easter is not about rearranging the furniture in our lives. Easter makes us stop and ask, what does it mean for me to take away the stone that blocks me from God and others? Easter makes us stop and ask, with God's grace, I don't want to be stuck in a tomb. What must I do to get out? Easter makes me stop and ask, why do you seek the living among the dead? Something has to change in my life. My mentality, my attitude, more than just my actions. And when it does, we will come out of the tomb. Because what good is it if Jesus was raised in Jerusalem but not here? What good is it if he appears to Mary Magdalene and not to me? What good is it if he was raised 2,000 years ago and not now? Easter is Easter, so let us celebrate. May the joy of the risen Jesus be the light in our darkness, the strength in our weakness, hope when we feel so low and depressed, and the peace in our storm. For we are, as St. Augustine said so long ago, we are an Easter people, and Alleluia is our song. My brothers and sisters, I wish you the joy peace and the love of the risen Jesus, today and always.